tonight at Growth Nights, we will be talking about boost your funnel. We have three main topics that, with the help of Shandini and David, we will be covering 15 minutes each. And then by the end of those three topics, we will be opening for questions that you can be submitting through the chat. And in here, as you can see, we have Shandini and David. Shandini, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Hola, everyone. And with that, I've exhausted my Spanish. That's the only word I know. So hola, everyone. My name is Chandini. I met Rene and David when I worked as a partner focused on growth at 500 startups. And at 500 startups, I worked hands-on with over 300 companies and helped them grow. So those were B2B and B2C companies, web and mobile, in different geographies around the world. And before that, I founded a hyperlocal marketplace company and grew it to about $10 million in revenue. So the hyperlocal marketplace was B2C on the demand side and B2B on the supply side. So what I'm trying to say is that I've had experience both on both sides of the table, both as a founder and a mentor, and with all different business models. And I'm hoping today that I'll be able to answer all your questions and help you with something that's applicable tomorrow, according to Rene, which is already lots of pressure. All right, Rene.
Thank you, Shandini, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. And also, as you can see, our other speaker is David. David, can you introduce yourself too, please?
Yeah, for sure. So this is David Keck. I'm a partner at Enginefish. We are a boutique lead generation agency based in San Francisco Bay Area. So before starting my own company, I ran marketing teams in the Valley, in Silicon Valley. So I did it for Kabam, which was a gaming focused mobile company, and before that, Intuit, a small business. So throughout that time, worked with ran the marketing team, where we focused on traffic, funnels, and analytics on it, and basically really used and leveraged paid marketing channels such as Google and Facebook, where we spend tens of millions of dollars in an annual marketing spend. So hopefully I will be able to use that experience from there and from running my own shop to help you guys with your own work.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us tonight as well, David. I'm super excited about this event because this topic, I think it's super interesting. And just again, for the people that just joined us, the format, it's very conversational. We will be talking about three main topics all around boosting your funnel. And each one of these topics are going to be 15 minutes each. And by the end, we will have live Q&A. All of your questions, you can start submitting your questions in the chat. And Danny, who is also helping us with all the logistics through this event, will be helping us putting together all those questions on another website where I will be able to moderate. So thank you, Danny, for helping us with the event as well. So let's get this event started. And the first topic is going to be the top of the funnel. And guys, let's start with the context that most of the companies already have a funnel. They understand funnels. So I want to make the first question that should a startup be focusing first on increasing the top of the funnel or optimizing the bottom of the funnel to then go back to the top? What should come first?
I can take it. Oh, go ahead, David.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it. Ladies first.
Yeah, I can take that. So, ladies first. All right. Lots of chivalry here. So top of the funnel is acquisition, getting new customers, and bottom of the funnel and middle of the funnel is actually getting those customers, giving value to those customers. So it's more of product and retention. So let's say you have something that's of high value. So even if you don't have new customers, your existing customers are going to fall in love with your product and continue to use your product and pay for it. That's the bottom of the funnel. Versus top of the funnel is to help you bring more new customers in. The most valuable thing you can do is have the best way to build a startup is to provide enough value that your existing customers fall in love with you and they stay with you and they pay for you. And once you have that, then you can get a ton more similar customers. And that's how you grow. So focus more on the second part of the funnel, the middle of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel first. David might have a different way of putting the same thing.
Sure. So, I mean, for me, the any conversion that you do flows throughout the funnel, right? Like what Chandini said, the funnel, there's three parts to it, uh, three or four parts to it. Acquisition, so getting them to try your product, conversion, and getting them to pay your product, and retention, getting them to stay over time, right? So that's all funnel from top to bottom, right? And you could basically just take the acquisition activation part of that, and that would be your marketing part. But there's other parts to it as well. Any work that you do in any part of that funnel flows down. So whatever increases you'll see at the top will flow down, increases at the bottom will still flow down. So it's from that perspective, it will be the same. The things that you have to consider, I think, are two things, right? One, where you're an expert in, right? So some people are really more focused and really better at acquisition, so like using marketing channels, or then other people are better at retention, like fixing the product and improving the product. So that's consideration one. Consideration two is where are you in your company's life cycle, right? Are you new or are you more established? Because really, if you're new, you should just focus on the top because you probably don't even have enough customers to basically use as test subjects for different offers, different features that you want to, or customers to just even talk to understand how good you have with product market fit, right? So that's how I would look at it.
Ooh, shots fired. Two different opinions.
Yeah.
Similar, I think.
But DQ, tell me this. Customer acquisition cost has been going up by like 60% in the last 5 years, right? So if you say focus on top of the funnel, the only thing I'm afraid of is it might, get people to have some bad behavior of spending money on spending money and getting more customers for a product that is very leaky, so that doesn't have good retention and doesn't have good engagement. So then you can spend all your VC money, all of Rene's money could be spent in acquiring a whole bunch of customers. Said, oh, I have all these users, but what is the point if they don't retain, right? Retention is a mark of whether you have product market fit. So if they don't come back and use your product again and again, if they don't find if they don't find value in that, and if they don't pay for it in some way, or if you're not able to monetize in some way, if there's no retention, then then focusing on acquisition feels like a waste of money.
No, that's a good point, right? So, like I said, but first, my straight up answer to it is look at the funnel, whether it's acquisition, activation, retention, and probably look at where the biggest drop off is and focus on that. But irregardless, because that will be your easy win. But irregardless, whatever part you fix will flow down. Right. Now, the only reason why I basically said that, if you're new, you probably want to start on acquisition, because while it is a leaky bucket, which is true, if you focus on acquisition and you get the customer to try your product, the very least you can do is, if it's leaky, go out and connect and talk to these customers and basically ask them what the problem is, right? And it's a easy way to achieve two things: to really test your funnel, how leaky it is or not, and two, acquiring those people that you can call and talk to understand what the problem is, right? The alternative to that is, of course, you can just call your friends or whatnot and find those customers yourself. But after a while, you will just run out of those people.
Right.
I agree. And I think the next question is related to what you just mentioned, David. Is there any good practice around designing the top of the funnel strategy? And is there any framework or ways of experimenting that you usually use when you are either applying it to your company or your customers?
Sure. So that's a good question. Let's just define there that the top of the funnel for me is the marketing part, right? So it's acquisition and activation. It's not retention or any monetization work that you do after you've acquired the customer, right? It's basically how do you get them to try and how do you get them to pay, which is specifically focused on marketing. From there, really, you have to be single-minded. If you're as a marketer, you have to be single-minded and basically focus on what do you need to do to get the first action from them, right? The minimum first action, and that the first action is not a click or a visit, right? It's actually submit something, submit information to be contacted, start creating an account, anything that the customer can do to basically establish a real relationship with your company, right? And within that funnel, you basically have three parts, right? To get them to get that first action. One is the steps of the funnel. Two is the offer at the end of that funnel. And three is the creatives that you use to basically get them to take your offer, right? So the way I would look at it is steps would be, do you ask for just a sign up or do you ask for a sign up with a credit card? That's two different steps. One is better, more people, but the other one is more monetization. The other part to it is creative, right? So should you focus on, is it easy? Is it cheap? Is everybody using it? That's messaging on the pages that you have on the steps of your funnel. The last one is the offer at the end, right? What are you actually saying? Are you saying it's a freemium product? You can use it forever for free, then you upgrade for it. Or is it free for now, we'll charge you a credit card later, right? Or is it pay now, but you get 50% off? So different offers for the same product. That's the offer, right? So three elements to the top of the funnel to work on basically the first action that you want your customer to take.
Okay.
Another way I would look at it is, if you're talking about strategies for picking your channel, then I would look at, what's the right fit, as in what is for your business model, which channel is, for your type of business, which channel is a better fit. So for example, if you are doing something related to makeup, right, then tutorials and videos are a better format for that. Then that's the channel you want to be on. So maybe something like YouTube or like TikTok is where you want to be on. If your product is something that people are searching, then Google Ads or SEO is what you want to focus on. So the channel should really be dependent on the product, and also the context and where the customers hang out and the context in which they think about this problem. And then once you know what that channel is, especially if it is like a bigger channel like Google or Facebook or whatever, just pick one channel and stick to it and just try to iterate and learn as much as possible from one channel before you try like 7 different channels. As a startup, you don't have enough resources. And if you're a super early stage startup, the pre-product market fit, you only have an MVP or whatever, then you can try a whole bunch of niche channels. These channels have very little traffic, but they have really small tight communities like Facebook groups or Reddit or like inside like, Craigslist or Nextdoor or something like that, where you can find groups of people. It's not scalable when you get bigger, but it's cheaper and you're able to find people who have the similar characteristics of what you're looking for because they are in groups. So if you're super early, you can try niche channels where you can go hustle without paying.
Awesome. Do you have a couple of examples of those, Chandini?
Yeah. So even my own startup, when we were super early, so on the B2C side, we were looking for moms, right? And so we looked at, we got like a first couple of moms. And then we had them share it to all the mom groups they belonged in. And those happened to be like, parents, groups of parents. There were listservs of just parents in offices. And then parents were also sharing with other parents within their schools, right? So if you take a specific customer segment, they kind of happen to belong in groups. Let's say you're selling wine. There might be a wine aficionados Facebook group, for example, or like a LinkedIn group of people who are looking for something in particular. So when you join those groups, as you offer something of value to that community, then you can become a part of that community and have them, help you out being your first set of customers.
Perfect. What do you think about building or using tools that will help you to get to marketing automation when you're getting started? When is a good time to start getting sophisticated instead of experimenting different channels and probably getting to learn things? When is a good time to start doing automation, and what tools do you suggest for this as well?
David, you want to take that one?
Sure. So when do you start automation, right? So um, you don't need automation at the start. At the start, what you need is results, right? And you basically, in results, automation allows you to optimize and get incremental increases, right? Not step function increases. The start, you want step function increases. You basically, it's results that you basically don't have to squint for, right? So if you did a test and you saw 50%, 100% growth, you know it's a winner, right? And the only reason why you're counting is because you're vain. And you basically say, oh, it's 105, not 100% growth, right? Um, and in that scenario, you don't really need a lot of automation, a lot of tools. And I would uh, basically posit that if you focus on the automation and the tools right at that time, you will probably spend a lot of time making sure it works for your system versus actually experimenting with the channels and with the funnel. So I wouldn't recommend it, right? So if you really think about it, if you used a paid marketing channel like Facebook or Google, the only thing you really need is their marketing pixel, so you could report conversions into the dashboard, allowing you to optimize those traffic. But you don't need anything sophisticated.
Yeah. Unless you have like millions of users or customers that you want to set up email sequences and things like that, you really don't need automation. Definitely early stage startups, you should be, one of the other reasons to do manual things is to learn. You don't know enough about who your customers are, why they like one thing versus another. So you'll be doing a lot more experimentation. Exactly as David said, automation is when you know everything and you just want it to be like in a set it and forget it mode, and almost like tiny bits of improvements, 1%, 2%, or like 0.5% improvements. But initially you're learning so much that you're looking for like that 30, 50, 100% difference or increments of whatever you're doing. You're not automating that. You need to be doing it manually to understand what works, what doesn't work.
Okay, and if we think of those experiments and we're doing everything manually, how long should a founder expect to have results within that? How much money or how much time should they spend in one experiment until they do another different thing?
So you're asking about experiments in general, but like even if you ask, let's say for a marketing experiment, yeah. So if you're talking about even a marketing experiment, let's say it's something new that you're trying out. Exactly as David was talking about, there's multiple components you're testing, right? Like even in an ad creative, or let's say you're just testing whether Facebook is a good channel to bring me the right types of customers. You still need to know who's the target, right? What message? Why would they click on this? Why would they come? And who, why, and so why is the right problem and the solution, right? Do I have the right message? Do I have the right kind of product for them? So even to iterate through these things, you'll need a few iterations to get there, but it's not like it's going to cost you a lot of money. If you have a big enough target audience, you can probably spend like $500 to get some directional results. You'll be able to find somebody depending on the price of your product. If it's a quick buy, then it's not too expensive to get somebody to come and buy from you, maybe like a few $100s, and you can get some purchases, right? It's not done. All you've proven is like, hey, I'm able to get a customer you're just getting directional results. I'm able to get people from this channel to come and buy something from me. Now beyond that is like, okay, who exactly is buying? Why are they buying? So we iterate on the target audience, and we iterate on the message, the problem, the creative. And also that's not just in the creative of the ad, but it's also creative of the landing page and the offers, as David was talking about, and the first action that you want to take. You iterate on all of these until you get to an acceptable amount of CAC. I would not say you're optimizing for profitability or whatever else, because this is a huge channel and you're going to get somebody from there, unless you're trying, if your hypothesis is that, oh, maybe it's Facebook, maybe it's TikTok, right? Like you're not sure where your customer is going to be. In that case, then, spend an equal amount of money on both similar messages, similar targeting, see where you're getting, a buy-in, like which one is giving you a directional result better, and then optimize, spend more time on that one channel. Is there a different way to put this, David?
No, I think you said it correctly, right? So like I would just say it in a different way, right? So for me, the each experiment will not take long, but you will create a lot of experiments put together, which together will take long, right? Main reason is one, when you actually put the experiments in, more likely or not, you will fail, mainly because um there is inherent expertise in growth, right? Not in channel building, in funnel building, or in marketing, right? Like Facebook and Google, you probably need a certificate to even just understand one particular channel, right? Like it's like being a certified public accountant, right? To be able to run Google ads really well. Um, so because of that, you will fail a lot and you will have to keep experimenting. But each experiment should be really quick. Main reason is because you're looking for big wins, right? And directional data, right? So when you run an experiment and you see, well, after uh, a day or so, you're only seeing maybe a 5% lift. If you're gonna keep on doing that, it's not gonna change overnight to 50. So you probably
Right.
just basically reboot that, right? And do it again in a different way.
Awesome. So that it's the end of this first topic. We actually spent a little over 15 minutes on this one. So let's jump into the next one. And it's also related to the same topic. So now we will be focusing on channels. And I want to understand what's your opinion on paid versus organic, what to try, what not, and also what's the right balance between these two for early stage companies. So just to get started with the first question, what are your thoughts around paid versus organic acquisition channels? And also to add on this one, do all successful companies use paid channels, or there are successful companies that only go through organic?
You want to start or should I, Chandy?
Go ahead, David, and I'll add on to it. Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. I mean, there's more. There's a lot of ways to cut this, right? So first is organic is actually not free. There is a lot of work in it that you have to put in there, and you actually have to wait a while, right? So just be sure that you consider that, because organic seems like, oh, everyone, let's do that because it's free. It's not really. That's one. Two, when you pay, you get results faster too, right? Because you paid and you are more aligned with the channel that you're working with. For example, if it was Google, you're paying Google to give you results versus through SEM versus SEO, where they're not making anything. Same as Facebook, right? Where you're going after virality. Well, that doesn't really do anything for them if you've actually paid Facebook, if you traffic quicker. That's one. But I think whether you go for paid or organic really goes into like what I believe is a business channel fit, which Chandini alluded to earlier, right? You really have to look at your product, and your product will probably sell better in some channels than others. If your product is insurance, for example, right? Insurance will sell best on search. It will not sell good on Facebook. If you're selling games, it will sell better on Facebook and not on Google. If you're selling health and beauty, for example, it'll work best on native ads, where you can actually create advertorials and show before and after pages, and people will be conducive to reading that. So consider that when you're finding that channel, look at your business and basically say, from this business, what is the better fitting channel for me to test to? Then keep testing there.
Yeah, and I'm going to just rephrase exactly the same thing he said. It's time versus money. If you have money and you want to see results quickly, go with paid. If you're a poor startup, you don't have money, you have no other choice. You have to work on organic and wait for a long amount of time. So that's, so and organic is not just SEO. It could also be like you building community, waiting for word of mouth. So basically, it's still earned, as David was saying. Organic is still not free. You still have to put in some effort to earn it. Either you're paying, with your time. With Google, basically, any content that you create is useful for Google. So you're creating content that's useful for your end users and Google, and that's how you're paying for it, right? Or like you're doing something valuable for your community over a period of time that results in referrals and word of mouth. This is how you get organic, right? So organic is not free. It's just two things. It's more sustainable. So that might be the reason this question was asked. So for example, once you, let's say I'm, spending whatever, $10,000 a day on paid ads, and I'm getting a whole bunch of traffic and customers. And today, if I stop it, it goes down to zero. Like I get zero customers from it, right? Versus organic, over a period of time, it's like money I've been putting in the bank, and then the interest, it actually compounds. Over a period of time, it becomes exponential. So initially for the first 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, you may not get anything. It might even take 5 years to build a community. It does take a long time to build a good community, but once it's built, the results are very irrational and exponential. You, even if you stop putting in any effort, you will still keep continuing to get leads from it and people who are still interested in it. So think of this as a high inertia flywheel. It takes a long time to turn it. But if it's a high inertia flywheel, even if you stop turning it, because of the inertia, it will keep turning by itself for a while before it stops. Versus paid is like you turn it on, immediately you start seeing results. And then the moment you turn it off, you see like zero results. So depending on whether you have money and how soon you want to see results. If you want to really see results very quickly, you better have money in some way, even to pay your customers to bring other customers. Otherwise, figure out how to survive for a long enough amount of time.
I'll add a little bit more to what Chandini said. I think as you figure out what your channel is, just remember at this stage you only need one, right?
Yes.
You can actually ride one channel, whether paid or organic, to a series B, right? And I've seen that a couple of times in the companies I've worked with. While you could be cornered into a one-trick pony, it's a one-trick pony that basically it delivers a lot of good users over time. And really, building that expertise is not easy, right? Channels and funnels are super complicated these days. That you find traction in one, you should really roll your sleeves up and really understand that channel.
I agree. I think there's a huge misunderstanding on that organic, it's free, because usually on early stage startups doesn't require to put money in, but it's time of the founders and resources and everything. But I want to split this into questions, and probably you can take one each. For the organic, what's a good, or what is the best strategy that you've seen in a startup? And the other side, it's, once I heard one in probably a keynote or a keynote speaker saying that paid channels are like cocaine, that once you're in, it's pretty hard to get out, and in some industries it's very difficult to rely on them, because as you mentioned, Chandini, once you turn it off, results also turn off. So two very different questions, but I would like to understand your approach on both.
David, you want to take the paid and I can take the organic one?
Yeah, go for it. You want to start?
Yeah, Renee, can you repeat the organic part again? What was
what is the best organic strategy that you've seen in a startup?
Right. So it really depends on where your customer is, right? And what is the context of your startup? Again, I'm going to go back, let's say, to the wine example. You just can't go to a group of, let's say you're producing some new wine. You just can't go to a group of in a community that already exists and say like, hey, people, buy my wine. They don't care, because you're not providing any value. So in any form of organic, you have to provide some form of value to them, something that's useful to them. That could be information in the form of videos, infographics, or like recipes, whatever it is. So only when you provide value to somebody will they provide something back for you in return, right? You never get anything for free. So then what is the value that you're going to provide to them, so then you can get that back from them, right? So all forms of organic is you creating value in any channel. So depending on who your customers are and where they are. So for example, in the insurance, which is actually a really bad example because it's super hyper competitive. But the reason for that is when people want insurance, they actually go search for it, right? So maybe yours is a very non-competitive area where people are searching, especially if you look at the long tail keywords and not head keywords, right? So let's say you picked out a whole bunch of long tail keywords where like, they're searching for things that they don't have good answers for. Maybe how to arrange my table, or how to be more productive at work, or how to make better decisions as a group at work, how to have less employee turnover, whatever it is that you want to. For example, those have some amount of searches, but not enough good results. Only when you create value and provide results for it, then all of a sudden, then people will be coming to that. And from there, you can direct them to like, hey, I have an app that makes it easier for you to retain your employees. That's related. So obviously you need to create value in a related area. You can't talk about employee engagement and sell, I don't know, some unrelated thing, right? Like something completely unrelated. So as long as it's a related space, then they start thinking of you as the authority and a thought leader in that space. That's the only reason then they will take your recommendation when you say like, oh, for these types of problems, these are the right ways to solve it. And here's the tool to solve it. So that's the strategy usually is like you start by educating them on something or providing some form of value. Then you establish yourself as a thought leader or a tastemaker or whatever. And from there, when you make suggestions, and they're likely to then follow and listen to the suggestions and take the action that you want them to take, which is like, hey, come try this product out. I have a quick example on that is Ipsy, right? They kind of did paid, but think of it as like in some form, they activated a whole bunch of influencers who all do makeup, right? And when people search for makeup, again, they go on YouTube. So Ipsy, they activated a whole bunch of influencers. For a moment, forget the fact that they paid them. Imagine if you can get a whole bunch of people who you're not paying because they have very few followers, but they can create all of this content for you about makeup. And the people who see it, who watch it, who go to YouTube looking for makeup tutorials, watch this, hey, it's a nice tutorial. And at the end of it, that person's saying like, hey, I got all these products from Ipsy, right? That's how you like grow awareness. And you can also have a call to action to sell those items there.
Awesome. Thanks, Chandini. And David, the other question was related to paid, depending too much on paid acquisition channels. What do you think about that?
It's a drug. I totally agree with that. The thing is with with paid, unlike organic, right? Organic helps you build brand more than paid, right? For sure, right? So with paid, because when you keep paying, you will just have your users surely there every time. And it when you're paying a Google or a Facebook, they will bend over backwards to make your life easier, encouraging you to pay more. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, when you're in that mode, you actually are trapped. 3 reasons. One is it's just easy, right? So you keep on doing it. 2, unfortunately, when you spend more, each of those new users are more expensive. It's diminishing returns, right? So it doesn't mean when you're spending more, you're getting them cheaper. It's you're spending more, each of those new additional users is more expensive, and you'll see that, and you'll be stuck in it. And 3, in general, you will be lazy to actually test out other marketing channels, right? And you should actually start looking into it, especially as you get bigger. You can get away with it, like I said, at the start, but over time, you have to figure out, well, how do I diversify and de-risk myself? And usually that's from this marketing channel, and that's usually looking into how do I build the brand, which opens and encourages you to look into organic marketing.
Okay. I have a quick example for that. HubSpot, for example, right? Like HubSpot is more of a CRM and a digital automation, like marketing automation, sales automation tool. But if you just go to HubSpot or like Google anything related to marketing or sales, like what is digital marketing? HubSpot will have an article for it. They have like literally hundreds of thousands of articles, like content, and they're the ones who kind of pioneered the thing of inbound and earned media. So, but it's not cheap because there's so much content out there. So you need to write high quality content that stands above the noise. So that takes, time and effort if you have the expertise. If not, to get the expert is still expensive.
Chandini, do you know if they do that in-house or do they have a community doing that for them?
No, they have in-house. So they create all their articles versus something like Medium. It's all user-generated content, but all of Medium's traffic comes from search, right? But it's all user-generated content versus HubSpot is like pretty much in-house generated content.
Awesome. Thank you. So the last question in this topic, it's also related to channels, but there's a word out there that some channels are getting oversaturated, and that makes them expensive and probably will have less results than probably a few years ago. Is that true? Is that true for all the regions? Is that true only for the US? And if so, what other channels should a startup be trying right now when we think on paid acquisition? Because I think the first two that come to mind always is Facebook and Google, right?
So let me if you look at it from the whole market, right, you could basically say costs are rising and cost of acquisitions are rising. But if you look at it from the context of it's a huge market, it's a huge business, and you're new, right? And if I forgot my stats, like being alone, I think is, don't quote me on this, like what, at least $1 billion a month probably in marketing.
This is Bing.
I
I
forget.
want to repeat. It's not Google, Yahoo. It's Bing, Bing, that Microsoft.
Bing, yes, exactly.
Yeah, search tool.
It's small. I forget the number. I had it in a deck somewhere, but and it's many millions of dollars. And you're spending 5,000 on your marketing, right? Like to start off, like how much of an impact do you really think that is to your costs, right? You could just basically bid low and try to get as much remnant traffic or long tail traffic as you can to get off the ground. So I wouldn't be worried too much about it.
Yeah, I would just rephrase that in the form of like channel saturation. Those channels have pretty much most of the world using them, right? Like all the probably everybody who has internet uses Facebook and Google. So the channels by themselves are not saturated. Because there's competition, your cost might go up. But what's more important for you is like, is your acquisition saturated on that channel? So for example, if you're selling something super niche or like whatever you're selling, if there's only so much you can spend per day on, there's only so many searches per day on Google. So if only like 1,000 people per day search on it, then even if you spend millions of dollars on it, you cannot get more than that. Then for you, that channel is saturated. You have to go look for a different channel. But that's when you're scaling. If you're an early stage startup, really, you don't have any of those problems. And your other question was like, what other channels to try? This is what goes back to the original answer, the initial answer I was talking about, like where are the niche communities where your user hangs out, right? That's why it goes back to like, who's my user? Where do they hang out? Where do they go? Who are their influencers? Who do they listen to, right? Like, so where is that? And go be there.
Okay, so just to clarify to that point, if you're not spending that much on ads as big companies and also your CAC, it's below of what you can actually spend, just keep using them, right?
Yeah. And initially, your CAC may not be below what you can afford, but it's still cheap enough to use these channels. Unless like your CAC is like, whatever you're really bad at ads, or you have a really bad offer, you have a really bad landing page, then your CAC is going to be unacceptable. But otherwise, it's not the channel's mistake. You can get good enough CACs. Go ahead.
And I'd like to add on to that too, right? So like in this is a scenario where all things are equal, right? That assumes like every small company with a $5,000 budget is going to perform the same. But really what you have in control is your business is your product itself, right? Which can dramatically change your performance of acquisition or increase your monetization, allowing you to buy more. Or two, your funnel, right? Your funnel is different from everybody else. Case in point, if you were doing display ads, right? So you were basically running these banners. Your banners can basically focus. One, you could, if you're selling insurance, you could basically say, hey, get a free quote right now, which is what everybody does. But you can approach it from a different angle, which is basically download my free guide into buying auto insurance, right? So because of that, you've acquired more users cheaply, right? Which you'll have to figure out how to convert them into buying user data or paying user data, right? But it's a different funnel, right? Which allows you to acquire maybe in a much cheaper fashion.
Awesome. Well, we now need to jump to the third topic. And this one is related to actually the bottom of the funnel, which is conversion, right? And probably not the bottom of the funnel. It's the second part as David mentioned, considering that the third is retention. But when we talk about conversions, and we get this question pretty often in our program, is what's a good conversion rate? How can you define that? And there's some industries that, of course, you can find average conversion rates and you can compare yourself, but probably there's some others that they don't have that. How would you define that you are actually having a good conversion rate? Is that good? Is that far from what you should be expecting? How do you think around this topic?
If you have that question, then your conversion rate is bad, right?
Okay.
Like, look, the industry benchmarks by the time they're published, it's average. You're not getting what the good companies have as conversion rates. Like any public data, any marketing information that you have in public is only after it's kind of been squeezed out, right? Like whatever is hot that's happening right now, nobody talks about it. So what the great companies are doing, the really good companies are doing, and what kinds of conversion rates they're getting, you'll never know, but they could be getting like 50, 60, 70% conversion rates to, purchase. And if you go look at Google, the industry average, you'll see 3%, right? So just assume that whatever conversion rate, which is very, very true, it's not just your assumption, which is very true in our experience working with every startup, is that pretty much any conversion rate you have is really low, but that's not the point. The point is that wherever you are, you should be aiming to be better than that week on week, right? So it doesn't matter where you are. So what you should be focused on is how do I get, X% better than that on this week on week. So then it gets you to the compounded growth rate. The reason it's not good is because you don't know enough about your customer. You don't know why they buy your product. You don't know who they are. You don't know why they buy your product. And you don't know if your product if the positioning is right and if it's the right product and if there's going to be retention. All of these things, the more you learn about them. So let's say you've been in business for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and you know everything about each of these because you've done enough work, you've done enough experiments, you've learned enough about it. At that point of time, you could be getting to a good conversion rate. By that point of time, you'll also have other industry contacts that you can actually then ask, like, hey, what thoughts of what, in other businesses that are similar to this, what sort of conversion rates are they seeing? And like always, obviously compare yourself to the good business, because average business gets the average 3% conversion rate, which is like not the, that's not what you should be aiming for.
Right.
David?
What do you think, David?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, it's, so week on week, your conversion rate should be improving based on your experiments. I think if you looked at it from an absolute, right? So that's how I approach this question, right? You basically should have a conversion rate that's good for you, right? You don't really need to look at anybody else or the market for that. Look at it this way, right? Your company has an LTV, right? The lifetime value. For each of these customers, you're going to make this amount of money over this amount of time. Really, the equation there is, in general, 1/3 of that is what your CPA target should be. So if you made $300 from one customer, you should spend $100 for that to acquire that customer. To spend that $100 has two components: conversion rates and cost of each of those clicks or visit or leads, right? You could have a super awesome conversion rate of 100%, but your cost of acquisition is 1,000. You're still underwater, right? You spent 1,000 to make 300. You can only spend 100. Your conversion rate could suck, right? 1%, but guess what? You're paying 10 cents each, right? So 10 cents. How much is that then? Like $10, right? 10 cents times $10, right? So you spend $10 to acquire a customer for 300, and of that 300, you can spend 100. So, what is the good conversion rate? It really depends on your cost of acquisition, which now inquires how much does it cost for you to generate those visits, leads, or whatnot, and that's really dependent on your LTV.
Okay, and when you think about improving week by week, when it's a good time to settle, like after how many weeks that you haven't been able to improve, or until you got to what point? What's a good answer for an entrepreneur that has been improving week on a weekly basis, and then somehow they get to some point that probably it's not very easy to improve anymore?
I would approach it from, so you're never satisfied, right? The goal is, how do you improve the two parts to it? It's how do you improve, it's not even conversion rate. How do you improve LTV, make it bigger? Because when you make it bigger, the 1/3 becomes bigger too. Or how do you improve, reduce cost per acquisition, which basically means how do you reduce the click cost or improve the conversion rates, right? And you don't stop within that whole equation. You don't stop, because the more you improve that, the bigger your company becomes.
That's the point of it, Rene. So you stop when you don't want to make your company any bigger. So your company gets to a point, you're like, I'm happy. It's like it makes $100,000 a year. I'm done. And then so you can stop improving.
Yeah.
But actually you can't, because like the world is not static around you. Even if you don't keep improving, somebody else is improving around you. So if you don't keep up, you're actually going down. So you may not be improving just to stay in the same spot. You have to continue to experiment.
Okay.
It's like working out and getting old. To a point, you're old enough, you have to work out to stay where you are.
Yeah. And I don't know how often do you see these, but what do you think about offline conversions when the strategy actually started as a digital one on top of the funnel, but you need to take the user to a phone call, to a meeting, or whatever other way to close the deal? How do you think is that strategy? Do you consider that strategy is scalable or not? And if not, how do you turn it into 100% digital?
It doesn't need to be digital to be scalable. As long as this, you can repeat it, there's enough of a market for you to keep doing it, then it's scalable, right? The only thing for you is like how to improve it is for you to be able to track it. If you can't measure it, then you can't improve it. So then you need to just make it trackable and measurable. So you just need to figure out like, okay, how do I, let's say a coupon code, for example, or a referral code or a tracking code in some way that you can connect the online with offline. So that way you can track how many of these onlines went into offline. So as long as you can track it, then the whole funnel is completely scalable. As long as you can, is improvable and it's scalable because there's a large number of people who you can keep putting into the top of your funnel.
I second that. I mean, you do have, you know, there are businesses that basically have to have offline, like an enterprise sale. You cannot close that online, right? Especially if you're selling tens and thousands of dollars. You basically have to have a rep, visit them in the office, they visit you, build all that trust. So actually they sign the contract. So, you know, there are instances where you have to have offline. The important thing, like what Chandini said, is attribution. How do you take that that conversion, that sale, and basically find the source of that within your digital media?
And if it's like, let's say, cash on delivery kind of a sale for like, you know, a small business in a like unbanked kind of a target audience. So it's all offline. It's non-digital, but you can still have, like, as I said, tracking codes in terms of like a coupon code or a referral code or something like that. They have to go enter in their ATM, or like, if not, at least like when they're buying from the store, whoever it is, wherever they're paying cash, you can have still something that you can track.
Awesome. I'm reading a following question of one of the recent answers that you gave, David, related to good conversion rates and how you calculated that through the CAC. And they say that if they don't know the lifetime value because it's a very recent startup, how can they know that? Guess.
Educated guess. That's basically what you have. I mean, that's the best you can do, right? So assume that each person comes in, will pay you, if your subscription, pay you $10 first month, $10 second month, they upgrade on the third month, so it becomes 20, and after 6 months they go away. You compute that, you make assumptions, back of the envelope, then you put the users in, then you will find what the right numbers is, and you course correct.
You'll know it after the n number of months, right? Like after a few months. But if you're like super conservative, think of it as like, okay, how do I make the money back in the same month? Right? Like at least how do I break even in the first sale or like the first month?
That's right. That's the other part of the that's the intermediate part of cost per acquisition and LTV is cash management, right? Because your LTV can be acquired over 3 years, so you might wait a while. So
Yeah, so if you have VC money in your bank that can float you for 3 years, you can afford to buy customers at a higher price because you'll make that money back in 3 years. But if you're living on credit cards, you need to make that money back in 30 days, right? So if you make that money back in 30 days, you can spend as much as your credit card would allow you. So you could literally be spending millions of dollars because you're going to make it back within 1 month. Within 1 month, your customer is going to pay that back to you as their whatever purchase price. So you could be spending $1 million a day if you actually can repay it the next day.
Yeah. So in that case, just spend as much as you can if it gets paid in the first transaction.
As much money as you have in the bank. If you have float in the bank for 2-3 months, then you can afford to get paid after 2-3 months.
If you can make the first transaction and the cost of that transaction break even, you made a killing.
Yeah,
for sure.
Awesome. And even if you can sustain that over time, it's much better, right?
Yeah, because over time, what you will be able to do is lower that or improve your LTV by selling them the best product again, right?
I agree with that. So what do you think on frictions that you can start having on the side of conversion? Let's say when you have competition and there's a real value in both products and probably there's a pricing war. How do you avoid frictions on that bottom of the funnel like that?
So I didn't get the question. So how do you avoid like price wars?
Yeah. And how does that affect the bottom of the funnel in terms of conversion?
Do you want to take that, Chandini, or should I?
Yeah, like I guess I'm going to divide it into 2 parts. Like, don't be in a business where like it's a price, where it's a price fight, which means you just really need to have a lot of money to outrun the other person to survive. Otherwise, everybody can keep slashing prices and then you're just it's not a sustainable business. You're not going to make any money. So figure out how else you can differentiate from the other business. What other differentiated value can you provide other than price? If it is price, it's a very, very hard business to be in. If price is the only value, because they can also cut their price some point of time. Especially if they get VC money, then they can cut their price. That's how literally Uber did, right? Like the prices of taxis was high and they had a big VC war chest. So they just cut prices for the consumer. So everybody used it and they got the behavior. And then they started, slightly increasing the price or whatever, but the volume also made up for it. So unless you have a lot of money, don't go for a price. Unless you have a lot of money, it's a huge market. You're going to get most of it. If you become the most dominant player, I don't think price is a good strategy for a business. How does it affect the bottom of the funnel? I am not sure, actually. I think, I don't know what that question means.
So
some of those questions we got it from the audience beforehand. Sure. So if we have in the audience whoever submitted that question, maybe they can help to clarify. My guess is that one thing that it might get affected is probably that you're actually in a bidding war through the paid acquisition channels, and probably it will get expensive, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it could, right? So if it from that context of a question, it could affect it. But if you build enough skill set around it, it doesn't matter. So, right. For example, within Google, right? You can, your competitor has 10 keywords, you have 500,000, right? Being able to generate and manage that volume gives you a competitive advantage that even if the market goes up and the other person is doing a bidding war, you won't be affected because you're not directly bidding against his keywords. You're using something else. So that's how I would answer that. I think if it was related to how Chandini answered it, wherein your product is competing on price, one, I think ideally you should have a competitive advantage that is product based, and when you're competing against price, that means your product is the same as somebody else, right? To be interesting, you don't have to do it at the start. You could launch a copy at the start, but you really quickly have to reiterate and differentiate yourself from that. That's one. The other one too is even if you are the same as everybody, the other product, and you have to play on price, there are other ways to be better than the other ones, right? So like having a better funnel or a better marketing strategy, your sales reps can be closing much better. So even if you're paying the same amount and you're cutting your prices, your conversion rates on the lead to a sale would be much higher, and you still will win, right? But in the world of like VC investments, those are not strong competitive advantages. What you really want is product that is super strong.
Yeah, it just becomes commoditized, right? So when you go to the market, how much of a differentiation between toothpastes? They're all somewhat the same, right? And huh?
They are
Yeah,
the same.
yeah, exactly. And then you can keep spending billions of dollars in ads if you're like, Unilever or Procter or Gamble to keep, advertising for it. But like you can't, price a toothpaste much higher than the others unless you have something super interesting. Which is why Dollar Shave Club came. They tried to change it, right? Harry's and Dollar Shave Club. The shaving blades are all the same, but they said, okay, we can first. They did compete on price. They did make it cheaper. And then it was about the quality and like getting it as a subscription to your like home and whatever else. And that was only because they were able to vertically integrate the manufacturing and like, cut out the whole in between, distribution stuff. So unless you're like changing something fundamental with the business model, it's hard to be in a commoditized market.
That's right.
Awesome. So we are out of time for this third topic, and now we will jump into the next part, which is Q&A. And I can see in the chat that we already have plenty of questions, and we also had some left from the registration. So I'll start with one of the registration of one of the questions that we got through the registration. So how to think around your funnel when you start growing. And one thing is that you were success with marketing when you had early adopters versus when you want to scale and you are actually trying to prove that you have real product market fit. How not to confuse, or what's the main difference when you had early adopters and with marketing you were able to catch them, and probably the main differentiation when you need to scale and the market is not probably developing the same way as your early adopters. That's what I'm getting out of this question.
So then it's two different target segments, right? Somebody who is and difference between an early adopter and an innovator and like the early majority is that for the initial set of people, it's the pain point is big enough or like it's so cool enough that they would do whatever it takes, right? So think of it as two different target segments, which means like who you're targeting and the message of why they would buy it would be different. The channels also may or may not be different. Maybe the channels are still the same, but because the who is different, the why would also be different. It's the same product, but the reason why they buy it is different. So I'm not sure I would change anything about the channels, but I would change the messaging and the positioning around it. Definitely for every new target segment, you need to change your message. This is different reasons why they're going to buy. So go ahead, DQ.
I mean, yeah, I second that, right? So it's think of it as extending your product, right? So for example, for your early adopters, the original product is package A and it's positioned with these certain features, right? As you scale up and you see that, okay, well, it seems to me that there is a second, the next market is not the early adopters, and they have different wants and needs. You can basically take the first product, reposition it, emphasize on a few different features or additional features that are built for the second set of customers. Then that's how you would, expand from your early adopters to make sure that they still have, you still attract them and whatever is left, the other pieces of that market into it, and at the same time attach another market on top, right? Which are related but not exactly the same.
Awesome. So next question is related to offline channels, such as billboards, flyers, and other traditional channels. Should a earlier stage startup be thinking about using them?
I would rely on digital more, because it is trackable and easier to scale and quicker to get results from. That said, there could be instances where you would need those type of marketing. I would still try to not use them, right? An example of what you would need them for would be local marketing. Like for example, if you were to do Uber or food service, like food DoorDash, then being able to saturate a specific geo really quickly, strongly, is key to actually scale, right? It's a network effect within that small geo. And so you would, likely use those channels, but they would be complementary channels because you just need to be big. I would still stay with digital channels because they're just easier to manage.
Yeah, I would say exactly the same thing.
Awesome. So next one, do you have any suggestion for a stealth mode company? It's very broad, that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, so you don't have to talk about your company, but you can still talk about the problem that they have, right? So you can name your company something else in your ads. You can have a different website, different landing page, but you can still talk about the problems or the goals that people have in your ads or in your outbound messages. So whatever it is that, because the message is the bridge between you and your audience, right? So you still need to communicate to them in some way. It could be a flyer, it could be an email, it could be ad message, it could be in the landing page, whatever it is. You still need to, if you still want some form of customers, you still need to talk about something that they care about, which is their problem or their goal. That's the only reason they're going to be interested in it, to come check out what you do. I don't know who you're staying stealth from. So if you're in stealth from, your customers, then you're not going to get any customers, right? So I guess the definition of stealth would be interesting here to see. Like, usually stealth is like before they launch, nobody knows that they're launching. Once you need customers, you need to kind of be public in some way, but you can, I guess, test it with a different product and company name.
Awesome. Let's jump into the next one. What do you think about the funnel being not linear but circular, where there is a continuous exposure until you find those triggers that allow you to evaluate the product?
Not sure I understand that question fully.
Yeah.
Me neither. So whoever posted this question, can you please clarify, and we will go over that question. Meanwhile, we can jump to the next one.
I can talk about growth loops, right? So it's not a funnel. Yeah. A growth loop is like, something gets people to do one action, which triggers something else, which triggers something else. And because of that, more people are doing it, and so on and so forth. So there's still drop-offs at every phase. So it's still a funnel in every section of the loop. So for example, you can have like people come to you through paid marketing, but once they come in there, let's say Pinterest, right? They create their own pins and boards or YouTube, they upload their videos. That way they're creating value for you. Your users are creating value for you, which is going to attract more users, right? So it becomes more of a loop. And the product is interesting, engaging enough for them to create more content. And then, and that brings you more organic users. So then it becomes more of a reinforcing loop in terms of acquisition. But still there's going to be drop-offs because somebody might come in there, they may not like it, it's not relevant to them, so they may still drop off. So in terms of engagement and retention, it's still a funnel.
Growth loops is a very good topic, I think, and that actually could be its own topic altogether. For example, another example would be like email, right? When Hotmail first came in, people would create Hotmail accounts, send Hotmail over, then the Hotmail will actually put a link at the bottom to say, click here to create your own Hotmail account, right? To some person who doesn't own a Hotmail account. And that creates a loop in itself, right? Just keep in mind, though, that not everybody can create a growth or viral loop. It's really built for certain people, most likely people or businesses with content, right? Again, if you're insurance, you do not have content, you do not have a viral loop. If you are a video creator, yes, you do have it. If you are a medium, yes, to a certain degree, you have some of that.
Awesome. Next question is, could you please tell us about results you have seen on TikTok versus Facebook?
I've not tried.
I've not tried either. Yeah. I think, but the thing is, I think TikTok is the one of those companies which has getting a lot of traction, and if you can crack it, being that itself could be a business, right? Being able to be a marketing company that helps people acquire on TikTok, right?
Yeah, with any new channel, awesome. Let's say when podcasting was new, when TikTok's new, Snapchat was new, you need to figure out what is the context. Because Facebook's been around for a while, it's easier to understand because there's enough tutorials and enough people written blog posts about it. You kind of know how the ads should be, because people go there to watch cat videos and like, images of their friends' kids or whatever. You can't put a serious business ad in there, right? Even business should be in the context of something probably a little bit more entertaining or, something more casual. So you know that about Facebook, and you know enough things about like what the ads should be like, versus with TikTok or like any new channel that comes up. The costs are going to be low, because it's going to take you a little bit of experimentation to figure out what works here, who are the kinds of people who hang out, who's actually going to click on it, because these are all entertainment mediums, right? People go to TikTok to be entertained. So we don't even know what percentage of those people are actually going to click on something. They probably most likely will only click on it if your ad is entertaining as well, right? It can't be like an ad pushing them to do something when everything else is entertainment. So yeah, new channels is always, it's going to take you a while to experiment and figure it out, which is why their initial cost per clicks or CPM, so however it is they're pricing it, will be low, because it's going to take you a bunch of experimentation to figure out what works and what doesn't work on the channel.
Awesome. Let's jump into Elliot's question. What do you recommend if I want to start an acquisition strategy on LinkedIn? That is, starting by testing different organic content will help me identify which one could give you a paid boost. I don't know if I understand the second part of the question, but on terms of a strategy in LinkedIn.
Right. So that's similar to the Facebook strategy, where like, you can start by distributing organic content. I think he's talking about organic, some kind of a high value lead magnet, right? So then if you distribute it organically first and then boost it through paid is what he's talking about. It's a good strategy to try, and LinkedIn results vary by geography. It doesn't really work well in Silicon Valley, for example. And LinkedIn also, so it really depends on who you're targeting and whether they're a LinkedIn user or not, how much they use it. And also, if you're trying LinkedIn ads, but if you're doing cold outreach through LinkedIn, then it's more of like, treat it as SMS, like a quick short message kind of a thing, where you're just reaching out to people to just, you can't sell them anything because it's super short, the format. Any other thoughts on this, David?
So, I mean, I haven't experimented with LinkedIn. I've worked with a lot of people who have, and basically from the ad side of LinkedIn, I haven't seen a lot of successes, mainly because from what I hear, the cost per clicks are expensive, right? So I don't have any feedback for you on like, and even the ad targeting might not be as, targeted and as automated or even as magical as Facebook. I think, like what Chandini said, like the opportunity could be when you're using outreach over LinkedIn through like InMail, right? That could provide some opportunity for initial growth, especially if you have a high ticket item. You could easily identify all these prospects that you have, right? The challenge there is, how do you do that operationally? Because it could get hairy, really hairy, really quickly.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just to add on top of that, our portfolio companies in Latin America that have tried pay acquisition through LinkedIn, they do have the same experience as David mentioned. So probably it's something that is happening everywhere.
Right.
Okay.
You were just about to say something.
No, I was just going to say it depends on geography, because I know it doesn't work in North America, but I was going to say maybe it might work in Latin America, but you just provided the thing that like it doesn't work in Latin America. But you need to try something. If you are going for, I do like the fact that you're trying to provide some kind of a lead magnet or valuable content and boost that. If that's what you're doing, then you need to figure out how to be very super relevant, relatable, and contextual. Right? Like what's more important is the lead magnet that you're creating, not the platform itself. So if you have a really good lead magnet, you can even do cold email outreach. It doesn't need to be through LinkedIn. Then even if you're reaching out through cold, but the content that you've created, the lead magnet you've created is so good that people will reply, even if it's whether it's through LinkedIn or through cold email or whatever. So in that context, it's really not about the channel. I keep going back to, yes, the channel is important, but more important than the channel is like, why should I click on your whatever you show in front of my face, right? There's so much content in front of my face. Why would I click on this? How can you make this interesting enough for it to stand out for me?
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I like to throw out something there too, like because when people say channels, they kind of think Facebook and Google, right? But let's throw a set of channels, right, that people can look into, which are all different from each other. So Google is basically paid and organic. That's two. Facebook is paid and organic, right? That's two again. Then you've got native. Native is Taboola, Outbrain, right? MJID, those type of guys. That's one. Then uh, TikTok is also, getting some traction. Like a few people have, one or two people have told me that, yeah, I'm seeing some success there. Pinterest, I've seen some success there. I haven't heard that much with Twitter nor with LinkedIn as channels. The other one that has as much, probably less traction than Facebook ads is YouTube. So that's another one there.
Awesome. Next question is related to a marketplace. What's the best way to acquire users and clients, and what would be the right balance to work on supply and demand?
That's a good question.
Yeah. So yeah, I can answer that. So think of marketplace as two businesses that you're running in parallel, right? And you're always working on which is the biggest rate limiting step. So in the very beginning, you have to start, it's a chicken or egg, right? You have to start with one side, and it's usually the supply side that it's easier to get, because the supply side is usually the one that stands to make money. So whichever, you need to have one side captured first, and then you can do the lead generation for the other side. So it's usually most of the time, supply side is businesses that stand to gain money, which is why you go get enough supply. What enough supply means is, like, let's say you're doing a marketplace for plumbers within your hyperlocal area. You don't need hundreds of plumbers. You only need 3 or 4 plumbers within that zip code, right? But if you're doing a marketplace for like restaurants, or in my case, we did for summer camps, you need to have 80% of the restaurants or 80% of summer camps there with their inventory, or people will not come, right? So you need to have enough liquidity in the marketplace for it to start working. And what liquidity means is, when somebody comes, when the demand side comes and looks for something, there's a reasonable chance that they're going to be able to find it, right? What the reasonable chance is, it can be like 50% chance that they found what they wanted, it got fulfilled. You can start like that, but you want to bump it up to 60, 70, 80%, right? And that's one thing when you're growing it. And then you always look at, like, why am I not able to, why is it only 50% liquidity, right? Like sorry, the liquidity on the supply side is, if I'm listing something there, if I need to be active and present in your marketplace, updating my inventory, or like in some way be active in your marketplace, how many sales am I getting out of it, right? For the effort that I'm putting in, how many sales am I getting out of it? So what is my liquidity measure as well? So there's a liquidity measure for supply side and demand side. And you can look at this and you can say, like, okay, looks like only 20% of the things are getting sold, which means we need more demand. Or like only 50% of the searches are getting fulfilled, which means we need more supply. So at any given time, it's like two pedals. You're only working on one or the other, depending on which side is more constrained. But you begin with one side, and after that, it's always a balancing act of, like, whichever side is more constrained. In which side of the market there is no liquidity, that's the side of the marketplace you try to increase, and then it goes out of balance on the other side. So you're working on two businesses in parallel.
The great answer there. I approach it, I'd like to add on it by approaching it in different ways, like 2 ways that you can maybe grow a marketplace, right? Obviously, there's a lot more there. So like what Chandini said, focus on supply. Here, I would look from it from for example, you're creating a network, a marketplace for plumbers, right? You could just you don't need 4. You could actually go hire and just say one big national carrier, right? In the States, Roto-Rooter or Mr. Plumber. If you could actually get an account from them, from the corporate office, you can basically, acquire for that company. And as you're acquiring, you basically start recruiting individual companies who will pay more to be put in front of the line. So when a lead comes in, they get it first before your customer gets it. That's one. The other one is the thumbtack way, or which is basically getting super cheap or free, right? Thumbtack, is very good in SEO. That they get all these leads that you can use these free leads. To just acquire your plumber to actually join the network, right? So those 2 possible ways. I'm sure there's more.
Awesome. Let's jump into the last question because we're running out of time. And I think this is a good one from Daniel Maldonado. As a startup, do you recommend to hire an agency for the marketing efforts?
Have David answer that.
No, you want to be, you get your hands dirty on knowing how to make that channel work, right? Especially since you will ride that to A and Series A and Series B, and it really takes a lot of expertise to be really good at it. You can hire them to help you, but you should not hire them to basically run it for you.
Yeah, to make a channel work, you need knowledge about the channel, but you also need to have knowledge about your customer and your product. That you cannot outsource. And that's a large part of your conversion rate and victory initially, right? You need to know that, and you'll be learning a lot of it initially. So once you know all of it and you're getting some directional results in the channel, and then you want to optimize it or make it better, maybe you don't have time to learn about the channel, then you can get a channel expert. But even then, you'll be losing a lot of learnings there. So as David said, initially, learnings are more important than anything else, because that's what's going to help you grow faster later. So you need to keep it in-house.
Awesome. I agree on that. And in so many other areas in the company in-house, I think it's the answer. And just to complement that question, Mauricio is asking, is there any good growth hacking book that you could recommend?
It's a really hard question.
I mean, growth hacking changes really quickly, right? I think you really have to learn it yourself, right? Or, join a community where, they can help you, right? Like 500.
I just put something in the chat. I tried to put all the knowledge that I had in a flowchart, along with, at least how all the different areas of growth fits together in a flowchart at growth.500.co. So you can go there, you can see how the different topics of growth fit together, and what you need to work on first versus next, because each of the topics is Googleable by itself, right? Like how to run Facebook ads, or how do I get more conversions? How do I get product market fit is Googleable by itself. So it just gives an introduction to each of the topics. But the more important part is, what should I be doing first and what should I be doing next? Should I focus on this versus that? That's what that flowchart answers.
Awesome. So with that, we are at the end of this event. I want to once again say thank you to you both, Shandini, David. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I think this was a great conversation. I hope everyone in the audience enjoyed it as much as I did. And just to finish, I want to remind you that this is an event that we will keep running every 7 to 8 weeks. So wait for our email to get invited to the next one. Also, you will be getting an email tomorrow morning where you can actually go back and watch this session again. And also you can rate it. So please help us rating these sessions, because it's actually super valuable for us to make the next one better. So with that in mind, thank you so much again for everyone that joined us tonight. Have a great night, and hopefully you can join us in the next Growth Nights.